Australia's economic growth is something of an outlier in the range of national growth experiences. Australia was born rich, attaining an income per capita higher than any other country, after little more than half a century of European settlement. Further, for nearly 2 centuries, Australia has remained relatively rich, despite some short-term slippages. Why? Between 1870 and 1890, Australian incomes per capita were 40% or more above those in the United States. About half of this gap is attributable to Australia's higher labor input per capita and half to its higher labor productivity. The higher labor input is due in part to favorable demographic attributes and partly to a favorable workforce participation rate. The higher productivity results from an advantageous natural resource endowment. By 1914, the income lead over the United States had all but disappeared due to declines in Australia's advantages both in labor input per capita and in labor productivity. Australia is a relatively open, trade-exposed economy. This means that changes in other countries' demand for Australia's goods and services can have significant implications for the economy of Australia. For example, an increase in global demand for Australia's exports, if not matched by an increase in supply, will increase the price of those exports. The ratio of export prices to import prices is called the terms of trade. This explainer outlines the effects of the 2005 to 2011 terms of trade boom on the Australian economy. What caused the terms of trade boom? The terms of the trade boom were driven by very large increases in the prices of some of Australia's commodity exports. Australia has plentiful supplies of natural resources, including the second largest accessible reserves of iron ore in the world, the 5th largest reserves of coal, and significant gas resources. For a long time, commodities have made up a sizable share of Australia's exports. From the mid-2000s, the prices for commodities used to produce steel and generate energy, including iron ore, coal, and natural gas, rose sharply. This was because global demand for these commodities increased significantly, and supply was unable to keep up. The increase in global demand is owed to a large increase in demand for steel and energy, driven by rapid urbanization and industrialization in China and some other emerging economies. Urbanization and industrialization require investment in new housing, factories, and transport infrastructure, all of which use steel in their construction. As a result, Australia's terms of trade reached very high levels. In fact, in 2011, the terms of trade were around 75% above the average of the preceding century. This was also a longer-term trade expansion than in previous episodes. During the boom, mining investment. These extraordinary commodity price increases triggered a massive amount of investment in mines and mining infrastructure across Australia. As prices for commodities increased, mining firms were keen to increase production to profit from the higher prices. To extract more commodities, mining firms expanded existing mines and developed new mines, leading to the largest resources investment boom in Australian history. For the 50 years leading up to the terms of the trade boom, mining investment had averaged just over 1.5% of GDP. In 2012, mining investment had increased 5-fold from its level in 2004, from around $20 billion to $130 billion, peaking at 9% of GDP. Recent growth. Many people in Australia might be grappling with the rapidly rising cost of living. But a new report shows Australians are the wealthiest people in the world as property and share values rose sharply last year. According to Credit Suisse's latest Global Wealth Report, the median net worth of an Australian adult increased by $28,450 to reach more than $273,000 in 2021. This put Australia ahead of Belgium's $267,890 and New Zealand's $231,260, which came in second and third in global median wealth. A major source of Australians' wealth increase was the record-breaking year for the local property market. National housing values rose more than 22% over the year in the fastest annual growth ever recorded. More millionaires. Soaring asset prices turned 390,000 Australians into millionaires, bringing the total to nearly 2.2 million in 2021. Australia now occupies the 8th spot as a millionaires' hub. Over the next 5 years, the number of US dollar millionaires in Australia is expected to increase 35%, from 2.2 million in 2021 to 2.9 million millionaires in 2026, says Michael Marr, head of Wealth Management Australia at Credit Suisse. As the club of highly affluent Australians expands, wealth inequality has also gone up. The richest 1% of Australians held 21.8% of the country's wealth at the end of last year, increasing from 19.6% in 2007. This rise in inequality is in line with the moderate increase in financial assets relative to non-financial assets, since the former is less equally distributed, says the report. So, as a nation, Australians are growing their wealth at a real clip, statistically at least. Our median wealth in 2023 grew at 5%, but, drilling down further, the average wealth grew at twice that rate, which suggests that wealthier Australians are growing their assets at a faster rate than those who are poor. The number of US dollar millionaires in Australia is set to keep rising for the remainder of the decade. According to UBS, there should be 2.3 million of them by 2028. This forecast pattern of the growing number of wealthy people is consistent among many, particularly emerging countries. But for now, the wealthiest countries per adult are dominated by advanced Western economies. Meanwhile, the average wealth per adult in Australia clocks in at just over $800,000, putting Australia in 5th position globally. While these statistics paint a picture of prosperity, and Australia is undoubtedly prosperous, many Australians are slipping into the bottom end of the wealth ladder. Addressing this decline will need more than just election-focused rhetoric from the political parties. So, what do you think? Can Australia sustain a rich economy throughout the coming years? Or will it fall into the rich trap, leaving the poor? How did we do? If we missed something, please say in the comments. And if you like this video, please give a thumbs up and subscribe to our channel.